Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing
Hello.
doing
Good
well.
evening. Good
I'm
evening.
warm. I'm going to try to make it through without using my fan.
Good
Nice.
luck.
I know, right? I got my ice water. I got my fan, even with the air conditioning on high, but we're good. So we're going to get started in just a little
Can I
under.
get in? I see Tammy Davies on here.
Yes.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you for the invitation and tell your mother I said hello.
I surely will, Denise. I surely
Thank you.
will.
I hear about it. That's why I moved.
Thanks for joining on, everyone.
Hey Tammy, I'm disguised as Donita Johnson Hughes, so
I have no words for that. I have no words.
I follow leadership.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated Alpha Sigma Sigma chapters virtual town hall meeting on the Black agenda. And let me also wish everyone a very happy Juneteenth celebration. For as we see a lot of discussions and see a lot of activity, not only on today, honoring Juneteenth, of our recognized, American recognized emancipation, it's important for us to know that it's hard to celebrate independence when we are still being enslaved. It's hard to celebrate independence when we are still being slaves to the economy, to the environment, to policies and actions that do not necessarily represent us in the most honorable or respective way. And we are here today to have a honest, real discussion about what the Black agenda should be. There are no better organizations than those that are represented on this call that can speak to the various challenges that we have in our community. And so, for those of you who may not be very familiar with Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, let me inform you that we were the first sorority here in the city of Gary, Indiana. We were founded on November 12th of 1922 at Butler University in Indianapolis, Indiana. We were founded at a time where the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan resided right next to the university upon which we were founded. And it was part of our historical relevance of Black women joining together amidst chaos that really interested me in Sigma Gamma Rho sorority. And so as we push towards our centennial, where we will be once again back in Indianapolis in 2022, we felt as though it was very important for us to become more engaged, visible, and active when it comes to addressing community issues. And so today we want to focus on going from social action to social impact. And we are very happy that organizations have taken time this evening to join us. My name is Tammy Davis, and I am the Social Action Chair for the Alpha Sigma Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho. I am a Gary resident, and I am a proud advocate for the past 20 years of ensuring that Gary residents, minority, female businesses have employment and contracting and procurement opportunities. And so with that, I'd like to list out the organizations that will be represented in our town hall in no specific order. Of course, we have Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, represented the Alpha Sigma Sigma chapter. We also have our Central Region Social Action Chair with us today, Soror Amber Sellers, who we will hear from later. We have representatives from the Urban League of Northwest Indiana, the NAACP at the state conference, as well as the Gary branch level. We have Black Lives Matter of Northwest Indiana and Gary, One Church, One School, the Gary Chamber of Commerce, the American Association of University Women, the Northwest Indiana Black Nurses Association, the Indiana Plan for Equal Opportunity, the Indiana Commission for Higher Education, the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement Executives, the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod, their Office of National Mission, Edgewater Health, GAPS, the Gary Teachers Union, and of course, we have our D9 represented by Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and our Indie Love brothers from Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, and our brothers also Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So we have a stellar and long lineup of presenters this evening. And so our ultimate goal is to ensure that we are comprising an agenda that doesn't just list wishes, but it becomes an action item for all of us to look forward to moving our community, the Black community, and the Gary community forward. Right now, I'm going to call on Soror Amber Sellers, who is our Central Region Social Action Chair, to give us an update. Soror Sellers.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you and good evening, everyone. And thank you to Soror Tammy Davis for inviting me to be on this call today. I had to do a little bit of juggling between calls to jump on, but I wanted to make sure I was able to provide the group and the attendees and those watching just a little bit update of what we are doing here in Central Region with Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority. And how it aligns with a lot of the work that's being done. And so taking this time as to sort of be a call to action to groups, not just in Gary, but those represented within the Central Region to realign ourselves and to re-energize ourselves for the work that we have ahead of us. So I bid you welcome from the Delta Eta Sigma Alumni Chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated here in Kansas City, Kansas, which is my home alumni chapter. But I, as Soror Davis said, I represent the 13 states, Germany and Canadian principalities that is Central Region as the Region Social Action Chair. So to give a little bit of context of what our Social Action Committee does as we function as an entity of our International Social Action Chair, we encourage and we empower our regional chapters to engage in social and legislative activities that are empowering to the community as well as engaging. And we look at that in three components of registration, mobilization, and education. And so all of our activities that our chapters do should focus on those three entities. And we have partnerships with several of the organizations that are here on this panel discussion tonight, which includes the NAACP and our Divine Nine Brothers and Sisters of NPHC, as well as the National Urban League. And there's also subsidiary groups that we partner with that are conducive to the locations where our chapters are, if those entities are not present. So ample opportunity for collaboration and partnership to address those three overarching aims of voter registration, engagement, civic engagement, and education. Two of the things that I want to focus on this evening briefly to give some context are two major initiatives for the organization as well as for the region, which have been retooled due to some of the due to the unrest that we're seeing in our country as of lately. That first one is our Much More Than a Hashtag initiative. And what you see with that is these entities, the projects under this initiative focus on social and systemic injustices. And we see that in our voter registration and education, empowering, engaging, and educating our communities about citizen review boards, understanding the roles of being a part of a jury and grand jury selection, as well as more local municipal issues that deal with property taxation, home ownership, and financial literacy, which all of these are building blocks to that address municipal issues. But we know that we talk about down ballot, but we also need to look at it from an up ballot piece. Presidential elections, Congress elections are important, but most important is also those local entities and local elections, and how the work that is done there truly drives from the bottom up, from state and the federal. So most of our projects focus on those entities, and we partner with, like I said, several organizations that are mentioned this evening on all of these projects. And so we have retooled that to make sure that our regional chapters are connecting with resources in their communities to educate their service areas, as well as to empower the membership as well as the community to be mindful and engaging of these topics. Lastly, and the second one that I wanted to focus on is our Golden Alert, which some of the organizations may be familiar with, that was initiated following the tragic death of our soror, Sandra Bland. And what the Golden Alert serves to do is to be an immediate social and legislative call to action for the sorority. And so we challenge our membership when a Golden Alert is issued to engage in direct and impactful civic engagement that focuses on education, health, housing, and other aspects of social determinants of health. And so it could be something as simple as contacting a legislation in regards to a specific bill that may be passed, something as grand as engaging individuals to encourage members and friends and families to complete their census. So the Golden Alert is that more immediate, quick impact engagement work that our membership does. And then our overarching aim within our civic, of our social action in the region as well as internationally, is our Much More Than a Hashtag initiatives. And there's things that can derive from that, but we focus on those 5 pieces. But these two initiatives right now is what's currently being rotated within the organization. And we continue to share that with the region as well as with the grand body as well. Because we want sorors and our affiliate membership to get that grassroots involvement before we can so that they feel more acclimated and comfortable with more deep entrenched engagement. So those are a couple of pieces I wanted to focus on and share with everyone. And if you have any questions about that, Sora Davis does have my contact information, and I'll be more than happy to share anything as much as I possibly can.
Thank you so much, Soror Sellers, for that Sigma update. And we want to collaborate, and as we begin to support the petition to reopen the investigation for the death of our soror, Sandra Bland, we know that what is subsequent to come will be petitions to really look back at a lot of these cases where we really did not receive justice for the death of so many of our Black men and women. And I know, Soror Sellers, that you have to go early to get prepared for our central conference activities that will be taking place. So I really appreciate you stepping out for giving us that update, as well as kicking off our call to action on this call. Just want to remind the panelists that you are more than welcome to utilize the chat feature here in the Zoom meeting. This is a conversation and a dialogue among friends. This particular event is being live streamed on Facebook as well as YouTube. So we encourage you to share it to your pages so that we ensure that the important discussion that we are having this evening reaches more than our ears. So thank you very much, Soror Sellers, for that. And so now we will bring forth our bacillus, Soror Dolly Harris, to present on our chapter and work and addressing our mission and how we execute our mission, and then give us that Black agenda action item as it relates to what we do and how we do it. Madam Bacillus.
Good evening. I am Dr. Laura Dolly Hood Harris, and I am the Bacillus of Alpha Sigma Sigma chapter, which has been in the city of Gary since 1924, the first in the city of Gary for the Divine Nine, which was mentioned earlier. Our mission of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated is to enhance the quality of life for women and their families in the U.S. and globally through community service, civil and social action. Our goal is to achieve greater progress in areas of education, health awareness, and leadership development. Our members and affiliates, staff, and community partners work to create and support initiatives that align with our vision. And that's a mouthful. However, in the city of Gary, there are quite a few things, such as tonight, we're sponsoring this forum so that we get a broad ideas from the different communities, just not the Divine Nine, but organizations that have been in the community and work each and every day to make the lives of Northwest Indiana, especially Black residents, better. We do this through education, and it doesn't go away. Education is the key. If we're educated, knowledgeable about ideas, and not only that, but things that are going on, such as today in the city of Gary, we have testing for the coronavirus, which has been spread rapidly and has affected us. It is being done at the Hudson Campbell. It was there Thursday, Friday. It will be there tomorrow. And it's there from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m., which is very important. It is free. You do not need a doctor's appointment. So what should the Black agenda include? One, we need to be counted in the 2020 census. Everybody counts. And it's very, very important because that determines what our funding is going to be in our cities and our surrounding communities. We have been extended a deadline to have our reporting in by October 31st. By August 10th, they will start with the street census takers that will go out and find the ones that have not reached in one way or the other. Two, we must go out and vote. And if you're not registered to vote, register your young folks. The initiative Rock the Vote has been around for quite a while. It's very important to get that message out. But most of all, when we vote and whoever gets in office, make sure that your elected officials are held accountable. Don't get comfortable. If there's an issue that you're not comfortable about, write to them. Believe it or not, they do hear you. As you see now, all of a sudden, everybody is interested in Black Lives Matter, that we matter. And yes, we need to keep them accountable and let them know through our voices. As Sora Seller said, and our golden alerts, write, contact, be active, all right? That is something that's very important. That's about all I have to say because I do have to leave this call. I do have another conference that I do have to get to. I have to leave by about 5:45. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Basilis. Just for you all's edification, our Central Region is having a Zoom conference of their own that is going on this evening. So we're going to upload our conversation with our soror so they can drop off and take care of other organizational business. So next we will have another soror, Dr. Vanessa Allen McLeod, who is the president and CEO of the Urban League of Northwest Indiana. Dr. McLeod.
Hello, Sor Tammy Davis and all of the other distinguished guests on this Zoom meeting. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me. The Urban League of Northwest Indiana is celebrating 75 years this year. This is my 10th year serving as president and CEO. The Urban League of Northwest Indiana provides services in education, financial literacy, diversity, and inclusion. In terms of what we can do to, should I say, impact and begin an action, a call to action in our community, one is to make sure that we continue the conversation about our history with our families. I've found so often that grandmama told us, and then mama told us, and then somewhere along the line, sometimes we stop, especially since we don't have the African-American curriculum in the schools. So it's up to us to continue having those conversations and reminding our children why we are voting, why the census counts. I also serve as the chairperson of the Census Committee here in Gary, Indiana. We've had our boots on the ground in terms of outreach. We can tell people it's important to respond to the census, but we know that we have to go out in the community. And so we've done that out in the community, asking people or reminding people that it's important that you respond. And just in case they didn't respond, we are helping them using our cell phones and our tablets. I believe one other thing we need to do is to make sure we support our Black organizations. It's important that we provide support to them. I'm thankful to see our Urban League attorney on here, Attorney Mike Tolbert. He's been with me for the endurance of 10 years, and I want him to stay with me another 10 years. But Mike Tolbert is our board attorney for the Urban League of Northwest Indiana. And anytime I get an opportunity to just highlight his services, to talk about his expertise, especially when I came into the Urban League, I called on him and he was there. So one thing, like I said, we have to do is continue the conversation to educate. We also do that by going into the schools. We have career and college readiness teams that go into the schools throughout Northwest Indiana. We target the 7th through 12th graders, and we talk about career opportunities, and we encourage them to go to college, but we also know that there are other careers, such as the trades organization, that sometimes pay more money than the PhD or the EDD. But we encourage them to make sure that they are aware of all of the opportunities and options that they have in education. Thank you so much again for having me. And I know that I'll be on here until about 6 o'clock, 6:15, because I do too have another Zoom. And this is, I guess, the new way we're doing things. And I'm learning. So thank you so much, Soror.
Thank you so much, Soror, Dr. McLeod. We are just zooming through our new normal, right? And so there's been two asks in regards to the census. And I think, Dr. McLeod, you are best to really kind of elaborate on this in terms of the challenges of getting people to complete the census and helping our community to understand the benefits of it. It's not a matter of, Uncle Sam looking at what we're doing and getting in our homes and knowing our business, but there's a direct correlation between the population of a city and town and the amount of funding that takes place. In addition to that, the results of our census helps determine how our congressional districts are going to be drawn. So there is a lot at stake when it comes to the census. How can we, as a body of community organizations, and we have over 20 organizations, different organizations represented on this call, how can we better support you and your efforts to help us get counted?
Thank you, Soror Davis. Again, it's all about communication and making sure that we are talking to all of the people that we come in contact with. So for instance, in your faith-based institutions, your churches, is your pastor talking about the census? Is the church clerk making the announcement? And then watch this, let's go a step further. Is there someone in the church that can just pull out their phone and help someone respond to the census? Do you have a table set up in your church to help those? Because sometimes, as we know, the paper form came and many of us threw that in the garbage, or it's under the stack of magazines. The next way to respond is by calling the number, dialing in. And the other way is online. But some of our senior citizens don't have computers. They don't have that access, or they're just a little nervous about responding. So what we can do is communicate that in our faith-based institutions and make sure the first thing I should have said is our own family. Some of our own family members have not responded to the census. So I would make a list of uncle, cousin, and them, and call them. We have families that are blended, where I'm taking care of my niece or I'm taking care of my nephew. If they're in my house, then I need to count them, and then we need to talk in layman's terms to them. we need to just talk about the money that it brings in. For each person that responds to the census, that's about $2,300 that comes into our community for each person. We know that we have a number of people in the community, and we know that we have some low responses. So right now, I would urge everyone, all of the sororities and all of the fraternities and all of the other colleagues on here, our businesses, ask your employees, have you responded to that, to the census? And that's what we can do more than just putting it out there. Let us help them respond by getting on our own cell phones or our tablets and walking them through. It only takes about 7 minutes to respond.
In the chat feature, Soror McLeod, could you put in the telephone number or the website? As a deacon at my church, at Christ Baptist Church here in Gary, I will make the commitment that when we have our Sunday school class conference call, to bring it up and to send it out to everyone participating on the class, and ask our social media coordinator that as we are still live streaming with Pastor Robertson on Sundays, that we post that link for the census at the conclusion of the sermon. And as you mentioned, it's just the little things that we do, starting right where we are, starting at home, going down our contact list. And just as we forward everything else, we need to forward the flyer about the census, forward the number, do everything that we can to be engaged. So thank you very much. Anything else you want to add in regards to that?
No, thank you always for leading us, Tammy, Soror Tammy. I respect your leadership and all that you do to bring us together. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we are going to move to a couple of other people who have some other commitments that need to chime off relatively soon. And so, so far we've talked about the census, how important it is to be counted, and in holding our elected officials accountable. And in regards to accountability, we're going to hear from two organizations that probably need to be more engaged with each other. And by way of this particular town hall meeting, I want to introduce Soror Laurel Kilpatrick over Black Lives Matter, Northwest Indiana, and Gary, to another one of our sorors, Lieutenant Davina Ward, who is the Vice President for the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. So we will start first with Soror Kilpatrick with Black Lives Matter, and then immediately following her, would like for Soror Lieutenant Ward with Noble to present after her. And I want to connect you two together so that we can probably have a sidebar conversation. All right, Soror Kilpatrick.
Hi, everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here. Hello, sorors. Hello, all others. As the soror said, I'm Laurel Kilpatrick. I'm an organizer with Black Lives Matter Gary. And there's been no shortage of work for a lot of all of our groups, I'm sure. It's just so very important for there to be folks that are out, those who can be, those who are willing to be out in the mix with people, to be out on the streets with people, whether it be organizing people, whether it be giving supplies to people that don't have them, or whether it be that protest. Being out on going to a protest is not the end of being out on the streets and talking to folks who otherwise wouldn't be in spaces to have these conversations about what our goals are, about what we're willing to do to actually see those goals. So again, Black Lives Matter, Northwest Indiana, Gary, our mission is to not only, so our primary mission, of course, is to fight for Black lives. That's the primary mission. We also recognize that we are not the only people on this planet. We recognize that many times Black people have been the battering ram for all other groups. All types of oppressions are tried out on Black people to see if it'll work on other folks. So for us, what that's meant is we have to build community with other folks who are willing to fight. Absolutely. And I can't highlight that willing to fight and what that means. So Black Lives Matter Gary in particular is a Black-led, very important, Black-led, multiracial, intergenerational organization, deeply rooted in Gary. After the murder of Trayvon Martin, Black Lives Matter Gary came to be. I was originally an organizer with the Black Lives Matter Hammond group that had that, in this area, I would say historic gathering in Hammond, Indiana, where we, people quite spontaneously went to the street in Calumet Avenue in front of semi-trucks and all to be very vocal about what the whole community, what people from all over the state and from Illinois were feeling, not just in terms of oppression by the police, but systemic oppression as well. And it's our aim, it's our duty, we feel, and it's our intent to stay out here. It's our intent to continue to do this work. It's our intent to make as many connections with folks who are for doing this work of achieving liberation. Primarily, we're doing it in Black communities, the communities that we're from. I remember as a very young person, half of my family is from Gary. I remember squatting all throughout Gary, so, we all have different histories and different traditions in terms of where we're from. But to bring together these forces who want positive change, to bring together these forces who want to end racism, who want to end sexism, who want to end classism, and who want to end the root of those things. And I'm all for building connections and building not partnerships, collaborations, right? Because partnership is kind of a business model. I know it's a popular word to use and it's not a bad word, but in BLM Gary, we see our fates as being intertwined with other people's fates. So we have to start acting like it. We have to start realizing that. And honestly, that's a lesson that I first learned being a part of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, absolutely.
Excellent. And so if someone wants to get in touch with you or the organization to get more information, how would we do that?
We're on email. We're on social media. So our email address, and I can also put it in the comments, is Gary2Ferguson@gmail.com. Our Facebook page, Black Lives Matter NWI Gary. Our Twitter handle is @BLM Gary. Our Instagram handle is @BLM Gary. We're hard to miss, that's for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Soror
Thank you.
Kilpatrick, and keep up the, you mentioned two very important words, duty and intent.
Mhm.
And if we are ever going to make a change, we have to feel like it's our call to duty.
Absolutely.
This is what we are supposed to do at this time. And we have to have a commitment. When you feel as though it's your duty, you honor that and you're committed to it, regardless. And if we're not being intentional and focused about making the quality of our lives and all aspects of our lives matter, then we're really not fulfilling our duty as being human beings here on this earth.
Right. And there's lots of roles for people to play. Absolutely. So it's not about your ability level. It's not about your age. It's not about anything like that. Right now, we're about to start a phone campaign. Most people can pick up the phone and make a phone call, right? So we're inclusive of folks who want to do something.
And again, that is very key as well. There's room for everybody, which is particularly why we wanted to make sure that we had diverse representation of community organizations in this town hall. there are some organizations that participating that have been around for years, and they may not have hundreds or thousands of members, but they're still very focused. They're still very intentional about their mission and what they do. And everybody could do something. Not everybody's going to march down the street, but you could make a phone call. If you can't make a phone call, you could tell your neighbor. You can do something. There's room for everybody to participate. And so we're hoping that as we get through this town hall, that we will be able to identify those action items and exactly what perhaps individual organizations can do for the greater good, for our greater duty. So thank you so much, Sora Kilpatrick, for that and representing Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.
And so now we will have a soror, Lieutenant Davina Ward with the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Are you able to chime in, Lieutenant?
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having me. When you called me yesterday, I was like, oh, wow, we have our Central Region Conference going on. So how am I going to do this call plus do that because I'm a delegate? But thank you for having me. Just want to give you a little information about NOBLE. NOBLE is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. It was founded in 1976. And the reason it was founded, it was because we had Black law enforcement officers coming on predominantly Irish American profession, which is law enforcement. So we felt the need to for the African American police officers to have a voice. When they first started, it was only about having those law enforcement officers who were lieutenants and above to be a part of this organization. We have since opened it up to all African American police officers, whether you're a police officer, detective, ET, sergeant, lieutenant, chief, superintendent, no matter what, they're all a part of NOBLE. We also have what we call supporting memberships. So we have actually partnered with organizations, companies, to come in and who are working with us along the ways with our motto, which is justice for action. And the reason why we have that motto is because we as African-American police officers, we see it on both ends. Here we are being law enforcement officers, trying to do the best we can to serve our communities. And we're also experiencing racism, sexism, and things of that nature inside the police force. So we band together and we have different things that we do to teach the community. Sora Sellers mentioned the law in your community. That was actually started with the national organization, but the Chicago Metropolitan chapter was the pilot program. I was a part of that from the beginning and I'm still a part of it. I'm an instructor. We actually go out to the schools, whether it's grammar school, middle school, high school, and we also go out to community organization and churches if they would have us. And we teach those people about what do you do when you interact with law enforcement officers. We teach them about law. It's very important that our people know about law because a lot of us don't. We think we know, but we don't. And if we, go out and get some information about the law, what we can and cannot do, what officers can and cannot do, then it would help us along the way. So we teach the young people, we teach the high schoolers, and we teach community organizations and churches about the law in your community, what you need to do if you ever get stopped by the police, what you should and should not do. We've been around for 44 years. I am part of the Chicago Metropolitan chapter, which is in Chicago. They had a chapter in Indiana, but now I do believe that it's not organized at this point. I know that we're having elections in NOBLE, so we will be electing a new regional vice president who her mission is to those chapters that have fallen by the wayside. She wants to get those chapters up and running again, especially now, with everything going on with the Black Lives Matter, the protests, the things that's happening to African-American males and females. So she wants us to definitely corroborate with all those organizations so you all can better understand what we do as NOBLE. We do a lot of things in the community. A lot of people don't see it or don't know about it. And one thing I will say, being a part of NOBLE for almost 10 years, a lot of things that we've had to deal with when we go out and try to teach our people about what we do as law enforcement officers is that we get a lot of pushback as African-American police officers. I'm just going to put it out there, you know, and like I said, again, no one knows what we go through in that department, and we go through a lot. So we have to band together ourselves and then say, okay, we're not going to stand for what they're doing out there. So we need to come out of the police department and teach the community what they need to know and help them. So therefore, we can stop having, you know, the Breonna Taylors. We can stop having the George Floyds and the Sandra Bland. The Chicago chapters of Sigma Gamma Rho, as you know, I am a Sigma Gamma Rho, got together and did the Golden Alert when Sandra Bland died, and with all the stuff that happened with Sandra Bland. We were part of that. Noble partnered with all the 3 major chapters of Sigma Gamma Rho so that we can do this Golden Alert. And I was on that panel. And like Sora Davis has said, and Sora Kilpatrick, and Sora Sellers, and Dolly has said, we need to come up with a plan to figure out what we need to do as we come together as organizations to try to get our voices heard, whether it's in our state capitals, whether it's through our congressmen. Some of us have aldermen, the mayors, the governors, even, believe it or not, the president of the United States. But we need to come together and decide, what do we want to do? What do we need to do? And how do we need to do it? And the only way we can do it is if we come together in forums like this. This is not my first one. I've been doing them all week. I've been doing them last week. And we've come up with some plans, like we said about the census, you know, knocking on people's doors to see if they've actually filled out those census, getting people to register to vote. That means not reinventing the wheel, but actually partnering with organizations who are already doing it so that we can just, you know, put more force behind it. Also, letting them know about our organization, Noble, because a lot of people may not know about Noble and what we do for the community. But just coming together and putting together a plan and then putting those plans into action. So that's my take on things. I don't know if you wanted me to say more, Sora Davis.
I think that's really good. Somewhere in the chat, I'll put your Noble's contact information. But it's important, again, for us to work together and support one another. As Black law officials, I can't imagine the things that you go through. And so when we know better, we do better. And information sharing is very important. When I was the president of the Gary NAACP branch, I worked with and had conversations with our current chief of police, Richard Ligon, who at that time, which is now over 10 years ago, he was active with the Noble chapter here in Gary. And I know that Noble hasn't been active here in Gary in a long time. But having a chapter that's active here could really help in helping people, whether individual or collective as a group, have a better understanding, as well as a direct line of communication. To have somebody to go to maybe understand some of the inner workings of how things happen. So one of the things that I definitely want to make sure that happens is Soror Kilpatrick, if you and Soror Ward at some point in time could have a conversation about mutual concerns that you individually have, and you know, whatever we can do to help facilitate that. So I thank you, Soror Ward. Is there anything else that you may want to add, or how can we be more supportive of Noble without having an active chapter here? And aside from that, how can we be more supportive?
Well, we also have the national organization, which our president is Serene Davis. She will be our outgoing president because we're having elections in July. But she has been going up to Congress. She has been sending out statements on, the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And she's, letting the people know where we stand, where Noble stands in terms of the injustices that's been going on with African Americans in the country. So one thing about it is to learn more about what Noble is doing. Also, even as a civilian member, you can be a part of Noble. You can actually be a member. So if anybody's interested in being a member of Noble, I will put the information in the chat for the national programs, or for the national organization, I'm sorry. So therefore you can find out information about which level of support that you want to give to Noble. But I did want to add also, not just us being African Americans on a job that's predominantly Irish American, we, as myself as a woman, also experience more than being on a job and just being a woman, period. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if he was talking. So me as an African American, me as an African American woman trying to move up in a job like the Chicago Police Department, and everyone knows how notorious the Chicago Police Department is. We're fighting as African American women, not just the males, but also as African American women, for change and to move up in the department so that we can have change. So we experience sexism, racism, and any other ism there is against us to try to move up in this department to make a change. So we need those organizations to also back the African American law enforcement officers to help us put people in place that can make some change in the department. If we have organizations to back us up, then we can do a lot.
Thank you. Backup, isn't that one of the terms you use in the police force? Having backup is important. And I don't care what organization, you need some backup, because I can use some backup in my daily work too. So we appreciate that. And so one of our sorors is taking notes, Soror Shakara Gunn. And because we have over 20 different panelists and presenters, we want to kind of take a break to recap some of those Black agenda action items that has been presented so far. So I'm going to ask Soror Shakara Gunn if she could just briefly give us a recap of some of the Black agenda action items that have been presented so far by our Bacillus Dolly Harris of the Alpha Sigma Sigma chapter, for Soror Sellers, our Central Action Regional Chair, Soror Kilpatrick with Black Lives Matter, and Soror Lieutenant Ward from National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. Soror Gunn.
Thank you, Soror Tammy. So I'll start just in the order that they were in. So our Soror Sellers, she talked about two initiatives, the Golden Alert Initiative, and she talked about much more than a hashtag initiative. Much more than a hashtag initiative focuses on social and systemic injustice. And they also focused on local municipal issues and financial literacy. Golden Alert focuses on immediate social action engages in the direct communities as a major focus on education and housing. Our Bachelor's spoke about our statement. She talked about the different things that are going on in the communities as we speak, such as educating the community, things such as COVID-19 testing that's happening at the Hudson Campbell every day from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Another point that she focused on was to be counted in the census and to get out and vote. Sir Dr. McLeod, who is with NAACP, talked about the services and education, diversity and inclusion, as well as financial literacy that the NAACP does. She wants to continue the conversation about the history of our families, why we vote, why the census matters. And she also spoke in great detail about how we can get out and get people to engage in the census, helping older people fill their census out, get involved with the churches. She also spoke about putting the census on your phone so that when you do have that conversation with people, you can take your phone out and you can give them your phone and say, hey, I can help walk you through it. She left a website, www.my2020census.org. And she also left a phone number for the census response number, which is 844-330-2020. Soror Laurel Kilpatrick, who is with our Black Lives Matter organization here in Gary, has a mission to fight for Black lives. They want to build the community with others who are willing to fight. Black Lives Matters in Gary is Black-led, it's multiracial and multi-generational. It addresses systemic oppression. It has an intent to make the connection with people who want to do the work and combat oppression to bring positive change in racism, sexism, and classism. They have an email address of garytoferguson@gmail.com, a phone number of 219-885-9150, and they are on Instagram and Twitter at BLM Gary. They also have a Cash App for donations at BLM Gary and BLM Gary for PayPal as well. Soror Lieutenant Ward works with NOBLE, which is a national organization of Black law executives. They have a need for African Americans to have a voice in the law enforcement field. They partner with companies who believe in the motto, justice for action. One important thing that she did bring up was that our law enforcement officers who are African American also need to be heard as well. NOBLE focuses on putting people in position to back up those people who don't have a voice in law enforcement. They don't want to reinvent the wheel, but they want to partner with like-minded people. The national organization also accepts civilians, so you don't have to be in the law enforcement field to be a part of NOBLE.
Excellent, excellent. That's a great summary. Did she miss anything? I think she nailed it right on point. Thank you so much, Soror. And so as we proceed through the town hall, we're going to give these periodic recaps so that we stay on point and as a reminder of what our action items should be as the Black agenda created by us for us. And as I mentioned in some of the communication to you all, it is our hope that we collectively support one another, be each other's backup, as Soror Lieutenant Ward says, because all of us, we can't do it alone. I don't care if you have 1 million members, we cannot do the work that we need to have done alone, and we cannot undo thousands of years of oppression by ourselves. So thank you, Soror, for that recap. And also for those of you in the town hall, please take a look at information that is being shared in the chat. So if you want to connect and support some of the organizations that are presenting, feel free to reach out to them directly. And if there is anything that Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority can do to assist in facilitating, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and we will provide our contact information as well. So now we will move on to our next group of presenters, which will come from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the baddest and the boldest, the most feared and revered, the most cussed and discussed civil rights organization in this united yet divided States of America. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to bring forth the State Conference President, National Board of Directors member, Attorney Barbara Bowling, who just so also happens to be an AKA. Barbara?
Hello, Tammy. Thank you so much for your wonderful introduction. I guess now I don't have to, I can skip that part and give myself a little more time to talk about some other things. But I first want to say thank you for thank you to you and also Sigma Gamma Rho for this convening. Thank you also for inviting me to be a part of this important conversation. I have already learned much from your prior speakers, and I'm just very happy to lend my voice to the conversation and the discussion. You've already talked about who I am, but let me talk about the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And the NAACP's mission is to secure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination and ensure the health and well-being of all persons. Hashtag, we are done dying. Did I say that again? Hashtag, we are done dying. So, what should the Black agenda include? The Black agenda should first and foremost include support and encourage activism. What we're seeing in these streets today is so heartwarming. It's the people they woke up a sleeping giant, and now they don't know what to do, how to put this genie back in the bottle, and the genie should have been released long ago. So we have to support activism. What does support mean for activism? That means that we have to be there to make sure that the police don't do anything to the protesters. We have to make sure that should our protesters be arrested, that we stand ready to make sure that they have whatever legal support they need to get out of jail, to support them, represent them when they get to court. And that reminds me of another hat that I wear, and that's the Kimbrough Bar Association. And we have made that commitment, the local bar association, Black Bar Association here in Lake County. Next, we should support and give attention to our NAACP game changers, which include education, criminal justice, and economic empowerment, health, voting rights and representation, environmental justice, and our youth. We have to make sure that we are preparing our youth not only for today, but also for tomorrow, because we're not going to be here always. And what we've been witnessing so far is extremely encouraging and knowing and giving us secure knowledge that this country is going to be okay left into these young people's hands. When we talk about voting, that is the one thing that everybody says that we have to vote. And then the question comes a lot of times is why? What will my vote and my voice do? It goes toward electing people who not only understand our agendas and our issues, but they will support our agenda. It's important that America knows that not only do Black lives matter, but Black voices matter as well. And our vote is our voice. Passing common sense laws, the hate crime bill, that we still don't have a hate crime law in this state, although they passed something that they purported to be one, but not. And when I talk about common sense laws, there was a law that was introduced in this past legislative session. And only thing it asks is that before law enforcement could take your child and move your child from the place where you let your child, you deposited your child, could be at one of their high school or elementary school games, and you left your child there and something happens, then and the police are called, before they can move your child from that activity or that location, that they need to contact you. That proposed law didn't even get a vote. So when I say that we've got to vote for people who will pass common sense legislation, common sense guns laws. Education, again, continues to be our cornerstone. We recognize that we can't get anywhere if we don't secure an education for our young people. That has been what has sustained us to this point, and that is what will carry us forward. And this current COVID pandemic has pushed that achievement gap further and further apart for our young people, for our young kids, because now they're not only are they not in the classroom, but they're having to learn from home where they don't have laptops, iPads. They don't have, they have those things, they don't have internet to connect to them. So now they're having to either try to look at their lessons on a cell phone, or trying to go to a place where there's Wi-Fi, maybe outside of the school, sitting in the parking lot. So those are the things that we've got to move forward with. And that's what I say as far as what we need to have as part of our Black agenda.
Thank you so much, Barbara. We appreciate your leadership at the state level, as well as the national level with the NAACP. And we will move now to Denise Abdul-Rahman, who is one of the foremost experts when it comes to environmental justice. And she chairs the Environmental Justice and Climate Committee for the NAACP State Conference. Denise?
Good evening. Thank you, Tammy and Sigma Gamma Rho and distinguished panel. I first want to just give some homage to the history of Gary and the origins of the Black agenda via the National Black Political Convention in the 1970s through the leadership of Mayor Hatchard. And yes, I serve at the Indiana State Conference as the chair for environmental climate justice. I'm also the staff for the national NAACP. I serve as the regional field organizer for the Midwest and Plain States, at the helm of the leadership of Derek Johnson, president and CEO. And also here in Indiana through the stark leadership of National Board member and attorney, President Barbara Bowling-Williams. I also want to remind us that we have a national MOU with Sigma Gamma Rho that's committed to principles on equal rights and social justice, including environmental justice. Our program, the Environmental Climate Justice Program, was created to provide resources and support to community leadership in addressing environmental injustices, including climate change, which has a disproportionate impact on communities of color and low-income communities in the United States and around the world. Our three objectives are to reduce harmful emissions, particularly greenhouse gases. It is to advance energy efficiency and clean energy, and to strengthen our community's resilience and livability. Our local, state, and national related work benefits Gary and other cities in Indiana and beyond when we work with our members to advocate for policies that call for clean water in schools. When we come to support cities like East Chicago that were inundated and are inundated with lead and arsenic. When we benefit our communities, when we call for environmental justice inclusion on the Indiana 21st Century Energy Policy Task Force. When we call out utility companies that right at this very moment want to recoup their lost revenues because there's been a moratorium on people having to pay their utility bills, and they want to recoup in the midst of a pandemic when our communities live in old housing stock and already pay a lot in energy. We are all about the Black agenda in our communities when we speak out about the needs for energy efficiency and weatherization, particularly when folks have lost their jobs. When we can call for electric vehicle buses so our children can breathe on the way to and from school. And so that essential workers like bus drivers are less vulnerable to COVID-19 because they can breathe. We support members in being on climate action planning tables of their municipalities and support their power to engage their communities to develop a plan that will solidify their resiliency. Everything from solar on our rooftops to community-owned solar, to clean water, food access, transit equity, and a just transition for all communities, especially those that are hosting polluting systems. So the one Black agenda action item that I would recommend to employ is certainly a climate action plan for resilience and resistance, and to vote for candidates that are climate and environmental justice believers. Currently, too, I must note that our Gary NAACP, through the leadership of Stephen Mays, is working on a community climate action plan. And then from the Black agenda of the 1970s, we must build for our people. We must build for our world, and we must stand on the edge of history. We cannot turn back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise. You've been in this fight for a long time, and thank you for your continued leadership and being really one of the experts in this discussion. I'm going to ask our Soror Gunn to kind of give us a quick recap of what has been presented as the Black agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. We have one more presenter from the NAACP, the Gary branch. How can I forget Ellis Dumas the third, I believe, Ellis Dumas the third. He is definitely a next generation leader in this civil rights fight. So we want to bring on Mr. Dumas in representing the Gary NAACP branch.
All right, and thank you again to the ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho for continuing to make sure we are educated and communicate and collaborate amongst these toughest times. Was already been said by both some great leadership in which I follow at the NAACP. I will not repeat. I will skip right to the point just to make sure we're moving along and talk about the one specific item that I know for a fact that I have the privilege of being able to share under the leadership of the Gary branch, and what we're going to focus on that pertains to just right now. They've already shared a number of things that we're doing nationally and locally, but as for right now, we believe that that Black agenda item that must happen within the city of Gary limits is that we must have a community driven policing board that is going to be able to be, in fact, the individuals that are appointed to that board are appointed by the community, not by any type of administration, and that same board have the ability for subpoena powers. Many times the NAACP stands in the forefront of many investigations. We get calls from the community asking to assist and or investigate situations. We always intend to hit a brick wall when we cannot get records because things are sealed. In order to be accountable, in order to talk about true reform, you must be able to unseal and uncover any type of issue. If the truth means that they did the best job they can, then we will be honest and say they did the best job that they can. But if the truth also means that unfortunately things could have been better, that's the only way we're going to get to a better place. So the first thing we right now, and the biggest focus for the sake of today, I would like that we focus on one of those agenda items being community driven or community based commission board for police reform. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ellis, and please tell your lovely wife, Gervais, that we all said hello and take care of all those wonderful young children that you have. Soror Gunn, can you please give us a recap?
Absolutely. So starting with Miss Barbara Bowling, hashtag We Are Done Dying, supports activism. Police don't harm protesters when protesters do have to go to jail, or when they do get caught up in the legal system, that they have support, and that we are doing what we can to help them get out of jail, to help them have representation in court. It focuses on education, health, voting rights, youth, and representation, to name a few. She also spoke about electing people who understand and support our own agenda. Your vote is your voice, so voting is very important. And passing common sense laws is important. I have a website of www.naacp.org or www.naacpgary.org, a PO box of 64843. Gary, Indiana, 46401. For Ms. Denise Abdul-Rahman, I have strengthening resilience and livability, reducing harmful emissions, and addressing the environmental impact for our climate. She spoke about the Black agenda, talking about clean water, food access, environmental inclusion, calling out utility companies who are looking to get their money back in the middle of a pandemic. She also spoke about a community climate action plan that is in the works. The climate action calls for resilience and resistance and to build for our own communities. I have a phone number of 443-915-2533 and an email address of Darman, DARAHMAN at NAACPnet.org. And lastly, we have Mr. Ellis Dumas, whose main focus was a community-driven policing board. So having our communities appoint people to this board, and this board having subpoena powers and being able to uncover the truth and talk about what needs to be talked about. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there. However, if there is something to uncover, it should come to light so that we can get to the bottom of everything.
Excellent. Once again, thank you so much, Sorgan, for that recap. And we're going to move on to what we're calling our education group. So we have a number of organizations that represent or are tied to education in some way. And so representing education, we have one church, one school with Reverend Cargo, Reverend Carell Cargo.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to congratulate you and the wonderful persons you have on this discussion today. I can recall 27 years ago, the One Church, One School was founded in Gary, Indiana by one of Roosevelt's students who graduated from Roosevelt School, a member of Israel CME Church. He met with Mayor Thomas Vaughn and Superintendent Jane Hawkins, let's say 30 years ago. He had a vision that if the parents, if the community, if the pastor, if the professor, what we are talking about, the P principle, if all of us could get together and have a one church, one school, what a great school system that we would have. We are in 30 states and Africa. I can recall that when I became involved 30 years ago, I was the Gary coordinator. And I saw the work was just too great for just one person. So God led me to ask Reverend Jerry Prothro, the pastor of Unity Baptist Church. He has done an outstanding job. The goal was, and Gary was the first system that went nationwide in the country, nationwide. Why? Because we believe that all congregations, Black congregation, white congregation, Roman Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, whatever denomination you are a member of, we want them involved in the One Church, One School. And Gary was the pillar because of the work that we working together in the P principle with all pastors, all people who are involved. When I have reviewed the group of people who are on this program today, I stand and salute you with your expression, your commitment, what needs to be done. It's a catch to that now. What needs to be done, we must come together and accomplish those needs. You know, too often we talk about what needs to be done. Nothing happens. But when we get involved like we are today, many things can get involved. So I want to thank all of you. If you have shared with all of us today what it is about. Well, one of the visions of the One Church, One School, we want to see every child get a good education. We want to see all families involved in the school. When families are involved in school, you're talking about the churches also are involved in school. We believe because churches are in the community where the people are, there must be a better connection with the schools and the people in that communities where the churches are located. When we can get that type of movement going forward, we will have less drop out of school. We will have more students increasing their grade level. It hurts me when I read the education report across the country that we as Black people,
Hey, how are
we
you?
are the lowest one in the percentage of
I'm good. I'm good.
expanding our education.
My head was
So
just
we must
spinning last
recognize
night,
that.
you know.
We must recognize it. So I don't want to talk too long, but when I get on this, I can go
It's
for
like,
24
what the
hours.
world?
So thank you all for listening
And
here.
so I'm trying to determine,
Excuse me one second.
you know, I'm just trying to figure
Someone.
out. Uh-oh. Hold on.
All right, finish up, Reverend Cargo. Thank you.
Now say it.
Now, that's my niece who came in here to focus things better. Thank you, Winter. Yes, whatever question you have, if you have any for me. I'm so, you know, it's just good to see all of you, my friends I've known for years. Boland, I remember she used to come and give the reading. When YGN Chamber got so she retired, couldn't do it no more, that was Miss Boland. She did it for years.
Yes.
Y'all looking good.
Thank you, Reverend Cargo. You know, your leadership and your commitment to this community is simply unparalleled. And we thank you. And let me just say that publicly as well, that we owe a debt of gratitude to you for your continued commitment. And you're absolutely right. It definitely takes a village. And when we talk about the betterment of our students and our youth and our schools, the church community is a direct partner with that. And so in alignment with that and with the church being a partner with the school, I'm going to ask Bishop Fred Jackson with the Indiana Commission on Higher Education to make his presentation.
Everybody, glad to be a part of such a great fine panel of educators. And Pastor Cargo, good to see you once again, my friend. Good to see you. I'm Fred Jackson with the Indiana Commission for Higher Education and with the 21st Century Scholars Program. Our mission is to make sure those who are low-income families and students to pursue after higher education. I've been with the program over 25 years with the program. We are just celebrating our 30th year anniversary of the 21st Century Scholars Program. It started back in 1992, 91, 92, and we have seen great results out of this particular program. Right now, we have 110,000 kids enrolled into the program. Over 45 students who have graduated using the 21st Century Scholars Award. And we are seeing great numbers of our kids who are part of the program, who matriculate from high school to college to complete college on some particular level. If it's not an associate's degree, it's a bachelor's degree and moving forward. With the situation in which we are present now with, I believe that all lives matter, Black lives matter, as well as Hispanics and Latinos, because we serve those communities and groups of people as well. And as we move forward with this new change and new normal, I think it's imperative for us as leaders and organizations to really take part of the direction in helping shaping our community and our state. The reason why I'm saying this is because the way that I see and working alongside with the Department of Education, looking how we're going to do schools now and how they're going to perform and what they need to do to change part of their curriculums that will help educate our kids with the new norm. 40 years ago, we didn't see anything called cybersecurity. And now we have a job that's dealing with cybersecurity. And so we're working alongside to make sure that our kids, part of the 21st Century Scholars Program, stay on top of the cutting edge of this global economy and also global employment, that where they can be employed and have the right skills that they can go after these jobs. It's important for us as an agency, CHE, to work along with different school districts. And I cover the Northwest region. That's 120 schools. That's over 10 counties in which I cover, to make sure that we have a partnership and understanding that those who are in low income students to enroll into the 21st Century Scholars Program. And just a real brief summary with the Scholars Program, if they were enrolled and they are approved, they stay drug-free, crime-free, and graduate from high school with a 2.5 GPA. The state of Indiana is paying for 4 years of their college tuition. That's $40,000 that our kids will have. And that will help matriculate them and moving them forward into higher education, also giving them that opportunity in which they need, in which they know that their parents may not have the money to send them off to school. What a great instrument that we can use in this environment now to empower our young people because education is going to be the key, one of the key arteries in making this new change in which we are pursuing to make sure our next generation be prepared for the shift. And so with this program, I've seen great success stories and seen kids come back to me and say, Mr. Jackson, thank you for sharing this information. Thank you for supporting me and making sure I got what I needed to do to move ahead and pursue my dreams. And this is something I think that we as a team can work together, because it's only me now because they downsize the Office of 21st Century Scholars. And past years, I would have a team of people to work 10 counties. Right now, I only have myself to work 10 counties, 120 schools, over 15,000 kids. And so one part of the program is making sure they complete their Scholar Success Program activities, and that's preparing them for college. And a lot of our kids don't understand the significance of that and why they need that. We took away and removed the affirmation forms, but we want to make sure our kids are prepared for college, are focused in on a career, writing a career plan, and so we can help along with them. What we did in this past 2 years, that we took our SSP program, not just only in the high school, but we put it also in the college area as well. So those who are in school, who are part of the 21st Century Scholars Program, that they will stay on a rigorous plan, the 30, 60, 90 program, that they will, their first year of college, they have to complete 30 credit hours, the second year 60, and their third year 90 credit hours to have assured that they will graduate with an associate or a bachelor's degree. And so just to be a part of the team of something as this, whatever we can do together, what I can do to help push the agenda forward, I'm here to help make it happen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bishop Jackson. Please enter your contact information in the chat room for people to follow up with. And as we compile the Black Agenda action items, we want to make sure that we have everyone's contact information that you would like to share. So in keeping with the support of the church and our schools, I'm going to ask Mr. Delwyn Campbell, who is with the Lutheran Church and Missouri Synod Office of National Mission, to give his presentation. And
good evening.
let me also just note real quick, Mr. Campbell, we know that we wanted to be able to get this done within 2 hours, but this particular town hall meeting is very important, and it is being live streamed. So we understand that if you just cannot hold on to the end, let me know. We can fast track that up, but it will be live streamed. It is being live streamed on several social media platforms right now because this is something that people really want to hear and need to hear. And we need to come up with our own agenda. So we're going to try to move through this as quickly as possible. Mr. Campbell.
All right. Good evening, everybody here and everybody watching on Facebook and Zoom. I'm the Reverend Delwyn Campbell. I am a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod National Missionary from the Office of National Mission, deployed to Gary, Indiana's St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church, the oldest church in Northwest Indiana. As a national missionary, I am not an employee of St. John's. I belong to the national staff, which means I have access to the Synod's resources to be deployed here to Gary. Among the things that have taken place since my deployment here in January of 2017, we've opened Ascension Lutheran Christian School. Originally it was open K through 2. It is now K through 5 elementary education. It is a parochial school. When I was a little boy growing up in Gary, there were several parochial schools in Gary. Now there are 2, Ascension and the school that's associated with Embassies of Christ. Those are the only parochial schools that exist in the city now. In addition, St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church, which has now been designated a national historical landmark, has been working with the Gary Cultural and Historical Society for the past several years, providing summer youth cultural and recreation activities through the Summer Youth Cultural Program. This year, because of the COVID-19 situation, unfortunately, we won't be able to offer what we normally offer, which includes music and fine arts, training, assistance with education skills in reading, math, also such things as photography, painting. Pretty much with each year, as the kids tell us things they'd be interested in, we try to add that to next year's list of offerings. But I do want to get back to Ascension because this year we've made a few changes. We have a new head of schools, Mrs. Stephanie Reeves. Stephanie is an educator with a long track record, both in Indiana and in Ohio as a Lutheran school teacher. She is also a psychologist. We are happy to welcome her aboard. We are also increasing this year to 5th grade, so we're looking for more teachers. Ascension, like I said, it is a parochial school. We do have scholarships. We are involved in the Indiana Choice Scholarship Program. We also have, in addition to that, the Lutheran Scholarship Granting Organization of Indiana Scholarship. The children that attend Ascension generally qualify for one of those 2 scholarships. And so we always tell people, don't think that your wallet is an obstacle. If you want your child to get this kind of education, we've done our best to remove as many obstacles as can. In addition to that, we not only are involved in the education of children, we also attempt to work with families because we do believe that families that are supported and that have access to information and tools can succeed. One of your earlier speakers had mentioned about internet. Because of what happened with COVID-19, we had to deploy laptops to the children of Ascension. And so we discovered not everybody has Xfinity or AT&T and such. So we had to find out what access to free internet is available. And I did post that in the chat. So we do have access to some of that stuff here in Gary, praise God, from whom all blessings flow. In addition to that, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod does programs, particularly during the summer, where we where member churches will send teams out to various locations for mission projects. Because Gary, Indiana has a deployed missionary, it is eligible to receive those teams for summer projects. We are currently involved in a 2-year program now where we've worked with the Calumet Arts Conservatory, planting a community garden in Tolliston. As part of that program, we educate the people in the neighborhood in how to grow their own urban garden to provide fresh produce. Matter of fact, everything that we do at St. John's on the property there, I also do at my home. So I'm the first one to try it out. And if something doesn't work, then we get back with the Calumet Arts Conservatory and say, well, we tried this didn't work. If it works even better than we thought, we say, hey, this thing is really working. So everything that we teach, we try. Like I said, we're in our 2nd year now, and I'm really looking forward to the Harvest Fest this year. Again, because it is a community garden, everyone in the area around St. John's is welcome to come out and participate in it. Welcome to come and learn about gardening skills. Welcome to help harvest, and welcome to take what they harvest home. Because if you don't take it home, it doesn't get eaten. And if it doesn't get eaten, well, it kind of defeats the purpose. In addition, we really want to be supportive of the community. And part of that just simply means being available to listen to people, to find out what things they are concerned about, and to, get resources connected to people that have needs. Everything can't come from Washington, D.C. Besides, it usually takes a while to get stuff to go through all the various channels to get here. And so if there's something that we find out about, we're going to work on it. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is big enough that we're not dependent upon federal grants to do things. Through agencies such as Thrivent and the Lutheran Church Extension Fund, we have access to capital assets as well. And so we look forward to working with the community even more. I look forward to working with others. I know Pastor Carville, worked with him in the past. I would have liked to have done more with One Church, One School, but unfortunately, being a missionary means I have a lot of responsibilities both inside the city and outside the city. And on top of that, now I'm back in school working on another degree in mission. So, but we've got people at St. John's and Good Shepherd Lutheran churches who are ready and eager to work with our brothers and sisters in the community. There's a young lady at Good Shepherd named Georgia who has a daycare, and she's got several sites, as I recall. And so any parents out there who are looking for an open daycare, she's open. You can call Good Shepherd Lutheran Church and leave a message, and she will get back in touch with you. I did leave my contact information. Please don't hesitate to call. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. We also offer assistance to other church congregations regarding information in church planting and such as that. It's what the Office of National Mission does. So
thank you so much.
Any help we can provide, don't hesitate to call.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And all the information that you have provided, you've input your contact information in the chat room. We appreciate that. And we'll now hear from the American Association of University Women from Ms. Winnetka Fisher. And there we do have a chapter here in Gary.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great, great, great. Hello, everyone. I want to first thank Sigma Gamma Rho, the Alpha Sigma Sigma chapter, for hosting this event. I want to tell you guys a little bit about AAUW, which stands for the American Association of University Women. And as you can imagine, it's an organization that started around the same time that women began to look at issues that impacted women. And, you might sit there and think like, well, what's really the purpose of AAUW and how it ties into what we're discussing today? So I am a member of AAUW. AAUW simply advocates for women and girls. Now, what we've done locally is we have actually issued scholarships. We did donations with books to some home-based daycare centers. We also looked at diaper insecurity. And I don't know if many people know this, but 1 in 3 families, they just don't have the means to purchase diapers. So imagine if you are a family or a mom that has to go to work and you don't have money to purchase the diapers, and food stamps is not going to cover diapers, but you don't have money to purchase diapers. You decided not to use cloth diapers, and you take your child to daycare, but the daycare doesn't accept them or won't keep them because there aren't any diapers. So we also have addressed that. So what I want to talk about is the Black agenda and what we can do or what AAUW can do. One thing that we're looking at is community-based training and how everyone, each of us, can become a 2-minute activist. AAUW has tools that will allow you to become a 2-minute activist. And we say 2 minutes because, as you said earlier, a lot of people aren't into necessarily being out in front of people. Being a 2-minute activist, you can do that via email, via phone. And it's a quick way to have impact, because what you're doing is you're connecting with local elected officials, national elected officials, and state elected officials about pressing issues. I want to just talk to you briefly about some of these issues and how it actually ties into what we're talking about today. So AAUW is looking at the Healthy Family Acts. And again, that might not mean anything to a lot of you, but with COVID, now these are things we've been working on, but COVID opened up the eyes of everybody that when someone in your family is sick or you have to take care of a sick person, if you don't have paid sick time, how do you make ends meet? Same thing if you're a minimum wage earner, how are you making ends meet? We also are looking at the Family Act, which doesn't have paid leave for parents, all parents. Some people do, some people don't, depends on the company. We're also looking at the student debt crisis. And why is this important to what's going on today? Well, it ties into the fact that a lot of times, individuals that are impacted by this, we don't look at it as low income, we look at it as low wealth. Income is something that you generate as an individual, whether it's monthly, bi-weekly, or bi-monthly. But wealth is created. There's a big difference between the two, a big difference. You hear people talk about the working poor. You hear people talk about how the middle class is 1 or 2 paychecks away from being poor. That's because that's income and not wealth. So looking at some of these congressional bills, AAUW really is looking to a lot of things. One thing that's really big right now with us is the Paycheck Fairness Act. If you want to, you can go, congress.gov. You can look up these bills yourself. It's actually Senate Bill 270. And the House has already passed it, but it's now with the Senate. But those are some things that are very, very important, because when people do not have the means to support themselves, they will find alternate ways, or they have to find alternate ways to survive. And how can we help each other collectively? As Pastor Campbell was saying about ways to provide internet for your child if you don't have a way to do it, or even what happens when school starts in September and your company won't allow you to work from home and the schools don't meet 5 days a week. How do we help to bridge those gaps? So this is actually a great time to begin this dialogue. If you guys want more information about AAUW, our website is aauw.org. I also put out Agnes George, she's our current president, her information. you're interested in collaborating with us. So I look forward to continuing the dialogue, and thank you for inviting us.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Winnetka. Always appreciate Agnes George and what AAUW does in our community, both locally and at large. We will now hear from Diane Jackson Chapman with GAPS Gary, and then immediately following her, we will hear from Leslie Dillon with the Gary Teachers Union, in that order.
Good evening, and thank you so much to Sigma Gamma Rho for hosting this, and thanks to all the panelists for being a part of this. And I'm going to start with the end in mind first. You asked us to respond to a few questions, and I want to start with where I think the Black agenda must start, and that is second only to the family and strengthening the family is education. So, and I've heard a lot of panelists talk about education and the importance of it. And so I'm hopeful that at the top of all of this will be a focus on education. And I want to be pretty specific because my mom, who's 89 years old, when she heard that the Gary Community School Corp had been taken over or it may not exist, she said, if the public schools are gone, then there goes the city. I hail from a family of 9. We all grew up in Gary, Indiana, educated through the Gary Community Schools. I now live in Atlanta, Georgia. So there is a group of us that wanted to come back, give back, and push forward. And that's how GAPS was started. Gary Alumni Pathway to Students. Carlton Guthrie is the founder and the chair of the organization. And I serve as the executive director and also one of the founding members. So our mission, I've already put it on the screen, so I'm not going to read it for the sake of time. I just want to say that it has been a blessing for us to collaborate with many other people that I see their names and be involved with, from the Chamber of Commerce to what's being done to ensure that more and more of our children go on to college through the 21st Century Scholars Program, through the Urban League. And we have just started collaborating even more so with the College and Career Readiness Alliance that was recently started. And I don't know, I mean, I'm a school teacher at heart, and I wish I could say, everybody raise your hand if you know the answer to this question, but I wouldn't be able to see your hands. But I don't think everyone is aware that once upon a time, to meet diploma requirements, you got a diploma and you graduated from high school, right? Can I see some nods? You know, that was graduation. No more is that the case. And so Tammy, I sent some information to you. I saw a thumbs up. So somebody knows that that is no longer the case. And that's an educational bit of information that needs to flow through the churches and flow through every part of the community to let parents know that no longer will just receiving a diploma equal graduation. And we say just, and that was the thing that most parents really push for their children to receive that diploma. But receiving that diploma in the state of Indiana will not equal graduating from high school. There are two other components, and I'll put that information out there as well. And I sent it to you, Tammy, in order for you to share with the network. It's going to require employability skills and post-secondary competency skills. And that's very important. And I know a lot of people have said a lot, so I don't want to say too much because I want to give others an opportunity to speak. It's just that I'm glad that the dialogue has started. I'm hopeful and believing that it's going to continue, and we'll find a way to network and netweave so that we can get the basics out to the community there in Gary. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much, and appreciate you allowing GAPS, a newly formed organization. We've only been around 4 years to be a part of this conversation. And I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Chapman. I've always appreciated participating in the career fairs that you have hosted at Westside Leadership Academy. So please be sure to reach out to the organizations that are listed in this town hall. So once again, we can support one another. So we will bring up Ms. Leslie Dillon with the Gary Teachers Union.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to first say thank you to Deacon Tammy. That's how I know her. We're in
Deacon
the same-
Dillon, Deacon
Yes.
Leslie Dillon.
And I'm here to represent the Gary Teachers Union. And I have a lot to say, but for the sake of time, I'm going to stay focused. Education will be at the forefront because of COVID. Once school starts in August, is when you're going to start seeing the disparities between African American children and other groups. And a lot of people are going to start having conversations about what in the world is going on with Black and Brown children when it comes to education, not only locally, not only within the state of Indiana, not only nationally, but it is a global systemic problem. And what is being done to African American children is strategically done, it's planned, and it's going to come out once again in the forefront. And so what we do as the Gary Teachers Union, you have seen a national movement with teachers with having to walk out and to start to help enlighten people what is going on in educational systems within this country, as well as within the state of Indiana. And of course, Gary, I always say, is the guinea pig for our state and for this nation, as well as New Orleans, to come in and overtake our schools and to have systems that are in place to redirect the path of our students. So people, once again, will end up learning what is happening. One of the things that we do within our community, we have started to become very political because politics has found its way into education, and it is directly affecting children in our communities and to the demise of it. It has separated funds, it has separated communities. And once again, just to piggyback on the speaker before me, our community used to be as one, and now we're very separate entities. And that has a direct effect on our growth, of our unity and our voices being one collective piece. We are no stranger to protesting. We are no stranger to being in the faces of our politicians, to start to have these conversations, to start doing something for the betterment of our children. And teachers are the boots on the ground when it comes to what is actually affecting our children, as far as the educational component is concerned. What the Black agenda should be, and this is my own personal opinion, and other people may not share this, but what we need to do right now is definitely, to reiterate what other speakers were saying, to make sure that our children are still receiving quality education, because they will not have the traditional brick and mortar education handed to them. And so now they have to learn how to navigate through other platforms, and they won't have that one-to-one instruction, the physical contact that a lot of our children need. Is very alarming for many of us who are concerned about, especially our populations of children who are medically fragile. And one discussion that's going to come out too are the health of the educators as well. Many teachers in especially urban areas have underlying conditions which will directly affect children and vice versa. So that's something that we definitely have to look into. If you're not in a school, you don't have children, but you have children that are your neighbors, make sure that you have conversations with them. Are you doing your work? Are you getting online? Are you needing help? Because some of these children will be at home more than likely and have to be educated from home, and there may not be a parent present. So we as a community have to step up and make sure that we are educating our neighbors' children and go back to that community model that we used to have. And then once again, going back to the village does raise the child. Mental health, emotional health has to be at the forefront, looking at standardized testing, which is used to say that our children are not performing when studies show that that should not be the all and in all. Standardized testing has been proven to be faulty, and that should not be what's used to gauge whether or not our children are quote unquote successful. We also need to put more emphasis on the trade programs, because a lot of our young people, including myself, a lot of teachers are in student debt because of colleges, because there's no financial literacy that comes along with high school education before you go out into the real world. So we incur a lot of debt by going to college, but there's a lot of conversation being had with people who are in the trades where you don't see a lot of minorities in those fields, and you go in there and your training is paid for. And in a lot of cases, they make more money than people who do go to college. And we are not pushing that for our children and creating those partnerships with organizations that will also help our children become successful adults to be able to sustain themselves. The census is huge. I can't say that enough. We need more funding in our areas. And once again, lack of being educated about things that actually bring in money into our school districts. Once again, it's so much to talk about. I'm sorry I had to cram everything in quickly, but once again, I do believe because of COVID, so we've talked about health, we've talked about the changes within our law enforcement, and I believe education is about to be next as soon as we hit August, when those doors open or when online education starts for this up and coming school year. And that's all I have to say. And I'll definitely put our email address down for our Gary Teachers Union, which is the only consistent organization within our school corporation to date. And so we will continue to fight to be at the table, to be the voice of our students, to ensure that their voices are being heard.
Thank you so much, my fellow Deacon Leslie Dillon. Having the voice of our teachers, for those of you that's on the front ground, from the practitioners, it's so critical to this conversation as we pull together our action agenda. We want to move from dialogue to a sense of duty, of really making an impact. We don't want to just talk to talk, but we want to leave here, particularly with all this time and discussion, with really clear, leaving with a sense of purpose and being active. And so as it has been discussed, how we have to keep in tune with the policies, we have to register people to vote, the importance of holding elected officials accountable. I want to ask Glenn Johnson to speak briefly about his experience in being a candidate and being involved politically at various different levels. And as we start talking about getting ready for the general election on November 3rd, there'll be a lot of conversations about absentee ballots, where there's been a lot of challenges and issues with that. So Glenn, I'm going to ask you to speak about what should our Black agenda be when it comes to political action and civic engagement, if you can speak to that specifically.
Sure. Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for inviting me on here. A lot of organizations are getting people to register to vote, and that's great. But the thing we have to do is we have to get people to vote. My very first election, when I ran for a school board, the election actually ended in a tie. And so, that doesn't happen often, but it does. And when you look at the last election that we just had, a previous election here in Lake County, only 23% of our registered voters actually voted in that election. And so, I don't know anywhere where you would be happy with only a quarter of the people making the decision for everyone else. But we also have some issues. If you think back to Georgia, they had 80,000 absentee ballot applications that were lost. You look at the issues that occurred in LaPorte, and even some issues that we had here in Lake County. We have to stay on top of the voting process as well. And we also need to make sure that our votes are counted as they are cast. And, for that, example, I have 5 things that we are starting to look at and that we're going to do. And what I'll do is I'll just put those in the chat for the sake of time. But we need to start making sure that our votes are counted as cast and that we have an auditable process for recounts if needed. And so with that, I'll turn that back over to you.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Be sure to put that information in the chat feature. We have to register people to vote. We have to register people to vote, and we have to get them to the polls. If we don't understand the importance of voting during these times, I don't know when we ever will, because the Attorney General that is overseeing the George Floyd case, the Attorney Generals are elected. Those are voting positions. Who we elect often determines who gets appointed to a number of boards, commissions, the police chiefs. Those are appointed by those whom we elect. So voting is extremely important. And as you mentioned, Glenn, we have to do more than just registering people. We have to have a system in which we are getting individuals to the poll. It's not an either or, it's both. It's a both. So we're going to switch to our health segment, if you will. Soror Gunn is continuing to take notes of identifying our Black agenda, our action items. She will give a full recap at the end, but we want to keep this moving as expeditious as we can. But people are still looking at it online. People are still tuning in. We have not lost our audience. So thank you, hang in there, and thank you for your patience. So as we switch to our health segment, we want to bring forward Ruthie Bernard, one of the founders of the Northwest Indiana Black Nurses Association. Ruthie.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You can't see me because my camera's not working. Well, since Northwest Indiana, even when Mayor Hatch was in office and he signed a decree to keep the hospital in Gary, we have had problems keeping nurses at the bedside. They come there for training and then they leave and go other places. So I started an organization where we give scholarships every single year to nurses, because when they first graduate, they always go to the bedside, at least for 3 to 5 years. And, and that gives us some leeway to keep nurses there sometimes. Now, they were still trying to close down North Lake Hospital because they tried to get Mayor Hatcher to reverse the decree, but he didn't. So I'm glad it's still there. But they have changed presidents now, which is a lot easier. And also, we also donate the money to a charity every year. And because this year has not been very good because we've been locked in. And it's just trying to keep nurses at the bedside to take care of patients when they come in, because it's going to get really scarce when you got all new nurses and don't have any senior nurses there. But that's what we continue to do, and we will keep trying to do it until I guess I'm gone. And I thank you for inviting me.
Great, thank you so much, Ruthie. For those of you who were not aware that there actually was a Black Nurses Association here locally, it's a part of a national group. And I've known and worked with Ruthie for many, many years. So once again, let's continue to support our organizations. And I believe Ruthie put her email address in the chat room for those who wish to connect with her further. And so next week.
Tammy?
Yes.
I'd also like to know that if anyone's in nursing school, we do tutor the nursing students if they want.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ruthie. And so now we will hear from the president and CEO of Edgewater Health, Dr. Danita Johnson-Hughes.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Tammy. Well, what I start by saying is that just about everything that people have spoken about here on this call, education, voting rights, all of those things are really what would be considered in healthcare as social determinants of health. And that's just one category of social determinants of health. But this social of determinants of health, just one aspect of it, but social determinants of health, to put it as simply as I can, it is where we live, where we work, where we learn, where we play, and even where we pray. And a lot of times the public policy around these issues, where we can live, access to good education, all of those things really lead to health disparities. And health disparities, again, simply are really just the differences in the burden of illness, violence, disease, all of that populations that are socially disadvantaged, like so many people of color, the things that we experience. And so health disparities come from a multitude of factors. They come from poverty. They come from inadequate access to healthcare, poor schools, poor educational systems. So they come from all of those things, but they do impact our health in a number of different ways. People who are experiencing health disparities may have such things as more disease, obesity than other people, no good access to good, healthy food, mental and addictive disorders. These are the things that kind of impact our health, and they come from these social determinants and our being disadvantaged as it relates to healthcare. So I think that one of the things, and I just want to say it simply, is that it impacts our education, our kids in school. If some of you may already know that even in terms of people being able to manage and maneuver through everyday life, the African-American community has a very high rate today of suicide. In Indiana, for kids from ages 15 to 24, suicide is the second highest rate of death for kids in that age group. And even when you think about younger kids who are 5 to 14, it's the fourth leading cause of death for those kids. So I think that a goal, if we're looking at how we move forward beyond this, is to really look at how we reduce health inequities amongst the population that we serve. And we're particularly talking about Black people right now. Think about this COVID-19 pandemic that has presented itself. Right now, I tell people we're experiencing a public health crisis on two fronts: the public health crisis of COVID-19 and the public health crisis of police brutality, years and years of that on the Black community. So in totality, as a whole, I think that a lot of these things, especially the health disparities, can really be eliminated or reduced if we focus totally on the social determinants of health, and that is getting better income for our people, better educational opportunities, better occupational choices that they can have, and addressing things like housing, where we live. So those things we can deal with. And if we can make an impact in that, we can improve tremendously the health care or the health levels, the actual health of the people that we're talking about today. So.
Excellent, Dr. Hughes. One point I want to bring home is that you mentioned about total health. That's what I get, a total health, total healing of our community. And some of the discussion that has come out of the police reform and criminal justice is that the police are not equipped or trained to deal with people that may be experiencing some mental challenges. So I'm wondering if, in terms of putting organizations together, if it is worth to have your organization, Edgewater Health, sit with NOBLE, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, so that there is a collaboration of the work that you do. And as they look to pull together policies that impact those in law enforcement, how our police can get to the resources to help address that mental health and overall health that you raised. So of course, make sure you put your information in the chat section. But I also want you to talk about, which I am particularly so proud of this accomplishment that you have, and being the only African-American woman who heads a mental health facility in the state of Indiana. Correct me if I did not speak that right, but I think it's definitely worthy of note, particularly for those who are watching us online. So can you just give yourself an accolade?
Okay, well, Edgewater Health was originally a community mental health center, and we still are a certified community mental health center in the state of Indiana. Been in existence for 46 years. I've been with Edgewater Health for 25 years. For the 25 years that I've been there, I am the only African-American female that runs a center in the state of Indiana out of about 30. About 3 or 4 years ago, we did get an African-American male who was promoted after his boss retired. So there's one in Terre Haute, an African-American male, but we also are a federally qualified health center lookalike. So we like to say, and we provide a lot of other social supports for people and the people that we serve. So we like to say that our organization focuses on the physical, mental, and social health care of the people in our community, the people that we serve. So we treat the whole person.
Excellent. And do you provide training?
We provide training, absolutely. In fact, a while ago, the city of Gary worked with us and the police department in Gary to start the crisis intervention teams, where the police officers and other law enforcement officers were trained on how to handle persons that they might experience in the community that might have had a mental health problem, an addictions problem. They might have been drunk on the street, and we trained them to do that. And it was a very, very successful program, but there's not a lot of funding for that type of program. And so over the years, it has kind of gone by the wayside, but it would be wonderful to do that, not just in Gary, but, you know, just a regional approach to some of the things that are needed in our community as it relates to the encounters that law enforcement has with people who may be mentally ill or intoxicated on the streets, or even some people who have health challenges that they may not really understand. If somebody's having a seizure or something on the streets, you know, somebody who might be having a health challenge that might not be understood, or they might not be able to handle. We'd love to be able to work with people to help them to be able to understand how to do that, or to help them when they need, when they need to, they can call us to have us even go out with them to address some of those issues.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Hughes. And so by way of facilitating collaboration, thank you, Soror Lieutenant Ward, for still listening in on us. But I'd really like for Noble to connect with Edgewater Health if you and Dr. Hughes can have a post conversation, because we must have each other's back and support one another. And so we want to support our sisters and brothers in leadership positions that can help strengthen our communities. Okay, so we're getting down to the wire. And as we talk about the health of our communities, education and business also go hand in hand. So we're going to switch to our business and industry segment. And we will now have a presentation by the Gary Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, Chuck Hughes.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I'm delighted to be on this call. Let me thank the ladies from your wonderful sorority for hosting this. I have one gripe, though. On the printed schedule that you issued to me, I was supposed to precede Dr. Hughes, but I'll let that go. Let me say this. I am happy that we get an opportunity to say something about business. Everything else has been important, I've learned a lot. I'm happy to see that so many people are doing so many different things. But as Dr. Hughes indicated, there are so many other peripheral, extraneous, extra factors that impact a person's life. And from a business perspective, I'm not going to sit here and talk about the chamber, how long I've been there, what we do, and all. I mean, I'm going to make the assumption that the people on this phone realize what chambers of commerce are about. The Gary Chamber of Commerce, just like any other chamber of commerce, is the preeminent business organization in any community whose mission is to promote business, attract business, retain business, support our local businesses. Let's talk pre-COVID or post-COVID, because it's all the same in Gary. Our small businesses, particularly our small minority business, has struggled for a long time. The Chamber, in its infinite wisdom, has tried to do what it could to support its membership. Any opportunity that we've had to go out and try to help them, we've done television programs, taking in people to help these businesses. Pre-COVID, I eat every day in a business in Gary, Indiana, because we have to do that. We have to support each other. I am localized in this discussion because I think that the protesters, of whom no one can suggest that, I don't know about protesting. I think I have an enviable career in civil rights, and all somebody has to do is ask me, and I can run that down for them. Public safety, 34 years, national public safety chairman for cities and towns in the United States. So, I mean, I probably can, check the boxes in all levels, but I want to localize this conversation. I think what we need to do is, first of all, take care of ourselves. We need to support our local businesses. There was references made about our unions, about the ability to get contracts, to get local people employed, those kinds of things. Tammy, to your credit, you do provide me with information that I can disseminate to the public, but this is probably above your pay grade. I need to get with those people in those unions and those organizations that make those decisions, the companies that do the hiring. That's where the chamber wants to engage. Now, I segue that into trying to let everybody on this call and anybody in the community know how important it is to have a firm tax base in the community, because you're not going to have schools that are functional. You're not going to have adequate police. We're not defunding our police or fire because they don't have any money. So we're not even in that conversation. We're not going to have the parks, the playgrounds, the amenities that other communities have, the things that Dr. Hughes alluded to. My suggestion is, and I know everybody feels the same way, but my suggestion is, if I could get everybody on this call, everybody in the community, everybody within earshot of me to consider, if you care about Gary, I mean, maybe I'm just talking to those who love Gary, has an affinity for Gary, thinks Gary is the engine that stirs the drink for Northwest Indiana and all of the things that we hear, that they should consider becoming members of the Gary Chamber of Commerce. And I say that clearly, not self-indulging or anything like that. I say that because when our legislators go and lobby downstate, they need the support of a strong business community, those voices to be heard. We were asked to lobby when Majestic wanted to move its facilities from Gary to 8094. We mediated a dispute that helped the Boys and Girls Club become Tolleson School being converted to the Boys and Girls Club. People don't know that, but we did. Our chamber is functional. Any chamber is functional. We do what the rest of them do. So we have to think in terms of having a concerted voice, because if our tax base don't increase, if people in Gary are not trained to take on these jobs that are taking place, if people in Gary can't fill these positions for this reimagining Gary that we're talking about, it's just not going to benefit the citizens. The citizens will be able to go and view things, but they won't be able to participate. So I urge everybody to not discount the importance of the business community. Those are the folks that pay the biggest taxes. Those are the folks that do the employing, and the chamber is your vessel to those entities. And so I just, one other thing too. I want to throw this in real quickly. I'm trying to talk fast. I'm trying to outdo Reverend Cargill and not be a preacher. But one thing I'd like to see happen as well too, and I've made efforts to do that in the past. I think the Divine Nine, of which I am a member, proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi, I think there's a role, a unified role for that group in this community and any community to be a positive voice for change, progress, getting some things done. I've made efforts in the past to help our young people by asking the Divine Nine to participate in certain entities. Now, I love Dolly Harris, and I'm saying that because Dr. Hughes is in another room, and maybe she hasn't tuned in.
Yes, sir.
Uh-oh. Anyway, but I had Dolly certainly supported this initiative to help our young people that we had. So I just really wanted the Divine Nine to be thinking about collaboratively what we can do, because we are all educated, we all are socially conscious, and man, we can make a tremendous difference in this community, and we can support the efforts. Yeah, we'll hold the elected officials' feet to the fire, but by the same token, let's support them and then make our value judgment. So I just, wanted to throw it all in, and hopefully that I wasn't off target, and hopefully, I didn't go overboard and all of that, but I am passionate about it. I have been, that. And so thanks for this forum. Thanks for this opportunity. And I hope I didn't disinvite myself the next time this takes place. Thank you very much.
On behalf of everybody in Gary, Indiana, we do love our Chuck Hughes.
You're just being patronizing.
We love our Chuck Hughes. And yes, the business community is absolutely important to the conversation. And that's why we have such cross representation of not only the Divine Nine in this town hall meeting, but we have been inclusive of identifying organizations that represent sectors from health, education, community engagement, criminal justice, or police reform, however you want to look at it. This is a cross section of leadership, and so definitely on point. But I would say not much is above my pay grade, because I determine my worth, my value, my education. When I sit at the table, all of that comes with me. So with that being said, and to piggyback off of one of the comments that Chuck had made in regards to the construction industry, we do have a representative here, Roman Bronson, who is the area director for the Indiana Plan for Equal Opportunity. He is also a journeyman electrician from Gary, Indiana. So Roman, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here speaking with all the distinguished panelists. Like Ms. Davis said, my name is Roman Bronson. I'm the area director with the Indiana Plan for Equal Employment. It's an awareness program. What we try to do is increase diversity within the union building trades through empowering information, as well as different programs, so that individuals can go apply to apprenticeships, which is the main training vehicle, and be successful getting into one of these apprenticeships, and subsequently get involved with a union. So the ways that we do that, and I'm trying to be brief, the ways that we do that is through a number of public speaking engagements. Whenever I get an invite, I try my best to be there. I know what being involved with a union, local union 697 with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, I know what that's meant to me, being involved with that organization, and trying to find as many other individuals within Gary, Hammond, East Chicago, basically all over Northwest Indiana, trying to find other individuals that could take advantage of these opportunities. So we also do a number of job fairs, as well as we put on the trade fair with the Construction Advancement Foundation and the Center for Workforce Innovation. It's I think the last time we did it, we won't do it this year because of the obviously the coronavirus, but we ended up having almost all the apprenticeships in the areas, 20 different ones. I think we had 19 at the last trades fair for area high schools. So basically, as much awareness as possible, wherever that may be, social media, in person, etc. As far as what the asks are with the Black agenda, from just trying to pin, everyone brought up very good points, very good action items. For me, is quite easy. It's trying to encourage as many individuals as possible to apply to these apprenticeships. It was, I would say decades ago is more primarily getting involved in union was getting hired through a contractor. Maybe you knew someone that was able to vouch for you, et cetera. Right now, as much as possible, because the industry has to keep up with productivity, et cetera, just like every other industry, they're relying very heavily on their apprenticeships to provide the specialized training. And one of the main, and Tammy and I work together on a lot of different projects. One of the things that often comes up is how many people are applying, what's the quality of these applicants, et cetera. And I do believe that as we basically empower these students, empower young adults with the information that these are very lucrative jobs, very in-demand skills that we'll create a larger pool of individuals that will be successful getting into these apprenticeships. And as we have more membership, we'll get more individuals that see people that look like them. What else? I want to make sure I hit everything. Also, continue focus on local politics that we talked about, civic after school programs. I'm part of an organization that's also called the Electrical Workers Minority Caucus. And that's something that we're trying to put together as far as engaging these students in some after school activities to explain to them that there is someone that is directly responsible for whether a pothole is not filled, whether there's some issues, there's some systematic issues at the school, et cetera. There are people that are responsible for them, and how not just going to vote, but how does your vote impact your everyday life. So other than that, that's my main presentation. I would love to partner and work with any individuals that is also in this line of community activism. As well as if it's not directly related to construction employment. I'm very interested in that. And I am involved with a number of minority tradespeople groups. So if we can come out and do some volunteer work, please don't hesitate to ask. And again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Roman. Yes, you and I, we collaborate and work together quite a bit. And the challenges in our community in terms of getting Black minorities in the construction trades, there are multiple levels to that. Number one, when the trades were taken out of the schools, it hurt that introduction for the students. Wood shop, electrical, those things that they used to have in the school system that were taken out, and shop classes, that has presented a barrier. Secondly, sometimes we're the last ones to find out when the particular construction union apprenticeship programs are taking applications. We don't find out about it until it's closed, and then we want to apply. But I can say that our office, the Office of Compliance at the Gary Sanitary District, had compiled a flyer with Roman's assistance listing every construction trade union apprenticeship program, their contact information, and when they take applications. A lot of that was on hold because of COVID. Many of the programs that were set to start were postponed or canceled or will be rescheduled. But we disseminated that to all of the churches, and as we update it, we'll make sure that all the community organizations on this call get that information. And then thirdly, we really do need to hold contractors accountable. When they don't hire local, there should be some liquidated damages attached to that. There should be some performance reviews attached to whether they get other procurements. So we know that there is systemic barriers and systemic, racism and challenges in that industry. And because I've been working in it for the past 20 plus years, we have a long way to go. But thank you so much, Roman, for that presentation. And as we get down to the Divine Nine, thank you so much, fellow sisters and brothers in Greek unity, for your patience. So we're going to bring forth Sandra Starling, with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Good evening, everyone. I bring you greetings on behalf of my bachelor's and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. I won't go into all of the things about our sorority because they're very visible. We're in the schools, we're in the community, we're political activists. There are numerous things that I could talk about, but for the sake of time, I want to talk about the one thing that we have that is a jewel in our community that some of the bigger municipalities take advantage of, and that's our precinct commitment. Once upon a time in the city of Gary, the precinct committeemen would go out and find out who's in the community and what's needed. That has disappeared. And if we could bring that back, since everybody is in a precinct, if we could bring that back, that would help to mobilize us. And we have to take pride in our own community. I heard several people mention about the Divine Nine. We should have the cleanest Broadway in the world if our Divine Nine would get together and split that up. We have numerous churches in the city of Gary, more than any area that I know. If the churches would band together and take care of the things they need to take care of, if our political persons who are in lead positions would encourage our few businesses that we have to clean up the area around them, then we could move forward, because our children are not going to care if we don't show that we care. And Alpha Kappa Alpha is ready to help to do that and to be a part of that. Thank you very much, Tammy.
Thank you so much. And now we will have, is it Shayna Carruthers with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Gary Alumni Chapter.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to say thank you to Sigma Gamma Rho for allowing us this opportunity to gather and talk about the needs of our community. And when I say our, I mean the Black community. This was perfect timing, and I think a few of us have said just that. And I won't be long, so I can let my other brothers and sisters of the Divine Nine get their opportunity to talk as well. But just want to start off by talking about what our mission is and our purpose, which is ideally to provide assistance and support in the Black community. And we do that using our 5-point thrust: education development, economic development, political involvement and awareness and involvement, international awareness, and physical and mental health. And in doing those things, we're pretty active in our community, and we partner with a lot of organizations, including some of our D9 organizations. We currently operate, prior to COVID, a soup kitchen out of Mount Moriah Church with the Alphas have assisted us with for the past couple of years. And we're hoping to, at some point, get that back up and going, because it's something that's needed, I'm sure, right now, given what has taken place in the last few months. We also do a number of activities that we kind of talked about and touched upon, like voters registration, getting the word and information out about Census 2020. We've partnered with the Teachers Union a few elections for the mayoral election to get the information out about the candidates and how we need to understand not just our bigger elections, our presidential elections or our governor races, but also the local races. So just having that information available for the residents, and doing that with the Teachers Union a couple years ago for the mayoral election. Within physical and mental health, and I know we've talked a little bit about that, and getting information about diabetes and that impacts healthy heart that impacts our Black community. And of course, I don't want to leave out youth programming. We've had our youth programs around for a number of years and trying to educate our youth and inform them about things like drug trafficking and human trafficking, as well as bullying and social media, some of the things that they deal with in school. And now here we are faced with COVID-19 and what it's going to do with our youth and their mental. So mental health is also going to be something we're going to be looking and concerned about here in the future of our children and quite frankly, families as a whole with anxiety, the anxiety of it all. Again, a lot has been said about the Black agenda. We've talked about Census 2020 quite a bit. We've talked about voter registration and getting the vote and the need to understand and make sure our voters count. And to be honest, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority is looking to be in the forefront of it all. We're looking to partner with organizations to get the work done that is needed in our community and move our community forth. And I know I've heard several times by a couple organizations about financial literacy. And that's one of the programs we're looking to get started this year is our financial fortitude programming through a partner with the organization called D-Free. So we're hoping to get that information out and put that and partner with some of the organizations like the Urban League to offer that, and maybe something with the school system to get in front of the children and get that financial literacy to them, because that's needed in our youth. But overall, trying to figure out how our Black community can become debt-free, and now how they can become homeowners and entrepreneurs and have more businesses in our city, in our communities as well. So that's pretty much it. And I'll put our information out in the chat so you guys will have it. And I'm assuming there's going to be, this is assumption that all of this information that's being put up in the chat will be disseminated across all the panelists here today, so we can have our hands and be able to do partnerships and contact people.
That's correct. Yes, that will be part of our follow-up summary.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Carruthers. And we will move to our sisters with Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Ms. Lily, are you on? Ms. Candace, you on the line? Can you hear me, Candace? All right, so we'll keep moving and we will bring forward none other than Reverend Carlos Reed, President of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
Thank you, Sister Tammy Davis. And there are several of my brothers online with me. First of all, I'm gracious and I'm appreciative of being invited to this quintessential discussion. When it comes to several things that have been said, I won't be as redundant, but alphas are known as the light of the world, so I'm going to move as expeditiously as possible. That means I'll be as laconic as I can be. If you look at our motto, if you look at basically our mission statement, that Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated actually helps to develop leaders, promotes brotherhood and academic excellence while providing service and advocacy for our communities. If you go to our website, you will see that alphas are very philanthropic. In fact, we're multifariously philanthropic within the entire community. All you have to do is follow our page and go to those things, and you'll see not only my page and other things that we do, but there are some very important things that we do as alphas, and that's the segment in which we have leadership. And since we're talking about the Black agenda, if you go to our webpage, you can find out the other things that we do in reference to instilling things in our young men, which is the Alpha Project. And then we also have what's considered go to high school, go to college. But there's one particular national program that we have, which is called Voteless People is a Hopeless People. And I think that's the nexus of the Black agenda. And I'll use this analogy, then I'll get out of the way. The analogy is that if you look at COVID-19 has, it's a virus, but on the code of COVID-19, there's a proteinaceous coat. And there's a reason that the coat is proteinaceous, because the cell itself is also proteinaceous, the cell membrane. And so in order to infiltrate the cell, it has to have a protein coat so that the cell will actually recognize it as being something that it will allow into the cell. And so what I'm saying is that we have to be just as virulent as COVID-19. Once we get into the cell, we must run our agenda, an agenda that's going to actually benefit our community. And Alpha Phi Alpha has always been at the precipice of running those agendas, even instrumental with the NAACP. We're ubiquitous in all areas of business and leadership. And the Alpha chapter here does the same thing, which is the Gamma Rho Lambda chapter. We are infiltrating businesses, and so we must then infiltrate the system, and we do that by voting. And that's why you can see the apathy of voting that occurred 4 years ago. All I have to do is mention hypochlorite, which is bleach and Lysol, and you'll know that there was a problem with who's been voted in. And the reason that we can change that is through voting. And so Alphas realized that early, that voting becomes an integral part of changing leadership. And once we get into those leadership positions, then we can impact the system and then run the agenda that will benefit our communities as well. And so that's where I would drop my nexus when it comes to our national programs. Voting would be aligned or analogous to the Black agenda, because once we get into these leadership positions, then we can appoint others who will help our agenda as well. Not that we would thwart other people, but our agenda needs to be propelled as well so that we can benefit and not be on the losing end of that spectrum. And so Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is very integral in the community. We are very avid proponent of voting. In fact, even though COVID-19 occurred, we did mention some things on our website, and we're doing some things virtually to incite voting or actually encourage others to vote. And that's where we need to do, and that's what we need to do, even as a Divine Nine. If we coalesce and come together and move in these positions, then we'll be able to impact the positions and change things that we can easily see that are incorrect. And so with that, I'll leave you that's the nexus of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We are known as the light of the world, and we move quickly. So I thank you, Ms. Tammy, for inviting me, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much for representing well. And now we will have to close out our panel of presenters. We will have the counselor, Attorney Michael Tobert, representing our Indy Love Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated.
Good evening, Tammy, my sister. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Yeah, so you're really putting me in the lawyerly position of a closing argument and closing this out. So I'll try to do the best that I can and be brief, because I know everyone wants to get on to their Juneteenth celebration. But I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, a very long history, so I will not go through it. But our primary purpose is achievement. And that is achievement in every field of human endeavor. So we have 5 objectives, but two of those objectives are really important for this discussion in dealing with the Black agenda. And that is 1, to encourage honorable achievement in every field of human endeavor. That's one of the objectives. And the last objective is to inspire service, public service and interest. So we inspire service in the public interest, and one can only look to our good brother, Brother Kaepernick, Colin Kaepernick, to see that he's a good Kappa man, and he inspired us all to do a lot of the things that we're doing right now by taking a knee. And that was not by mistake. He was made that way, and it's been put in him, and it's coming full circle. So one of the things, or a few of the things that we do in our community, particularly the Gary Alumni Chapter, which goes all the way back to 1945. We'll be celebrating our 75th this year, is we do a lot of community initiatives with kids. We have a national Guy Right program. And in that Guy Right program, under the umbrella is Kappa League. It's a branch of Guy Right where we really take high schoolers and we teach them how to be young men. We teach them how to be respectful, and we teach them how to be pillars of their community. So that's one of the important things that we do in Kappa. The other thing we do is a C. Roger Wilson conference that occurs once a year in every province. And in that C. Roger Wilson conference, all of the undergraduate Kappas are taught life leadership skills, and very importantly, they're taught how to manage money, encouraged to operate and control their own businesses and really be impactful in their communities, which is really a perfect segue into what I believe the Black agenda should be. And we discussed a lot of issues on this Zoom, and it was a very good Zoom conference. And one of the things that we really glossed over in terms of really identifying what the Black agenda should be or could be is the economics that really impact our communities and our neighborhoods. And unfortunately, we as African Americans are really shamed into not aggressively and intentionally supporting our own. When we encourage the support of Black business ownership, solely Black business ownership, we're called racist, we're called biased, when other groups have been doing it since the beginning of time. If you look at the Jewish community, you can go 20 to 30 minutes west and you can run right down 94 West and you run into a place called Chinatown. And no one says that that's racist. But when African Americans try to control and hold their community and bounce the dollars into their community, they're called racist. That's not racist. That's the Black agenda. And that's what the Black agenda should be, which is to pool and control our resources. There's a book that really inspired me that I would recommend that everyone on this call should read. It's a book by Dr. Claude Anderson called Powernomics. And what that book does is it talks about the direct correlation between police brutality, crime, and all of the things that plague our community based on our inability to control the dollars in our neighborhood. So if you look at most groups, if you look at the Jewish community all the way down to maybe the Asian community and other communities, their dollar bounces in their community some 15 to 20 times. African Americans' dollar bounces sometimes one time in their community. Well, there's a direct correlation. There's no crime, pretty much zero crime and police brutality in affluent areas where the dollar is bounced, where there's a lot of crime and police brutality that plagues our community because we're not bouncing the dollar and controlling our communities. So that is, for me, point one. We should encourage the pooling of our assets amongst Black businesses and support Black businesses and be intentional about it. It's Juneteenth, talk about it, say it, support our own, and we should encourage that. There's over $1 trillion of buying power in the Black community. And in 2018, there was a study that showed that corporations are actually advertising less to Black people. What does that mean for us? That means that they're getting more of our money and they're not even advertising to us. So we're giving it away, all right? So we need to really, really focus on that. The second of my 3 points would be encourage financial literacy. And I know the beautiful sisters of Delta Sigma Theta kind of alluded to that and talked about that. But financial literacy is an extremely important part and should be one of the focus of our agendas. And what that means is we need to teach our people, Black people, how to manage their money, but more importantly, not just encourage jobs, encourage ownership. There's a difference. We need to encourage our people to own. If you go to the book Powernomics again, there's a direct correlation between the community problems that we have and business ownership. Most communities that don't have the problems that we have, the Jewish, the Asian, and other communities, have a high concentration of business ownerships. The people that are at the bottom in business ownership are, guess who? It's us. We don't own businesses, we're consumers primarily. So that is a problem. And a really good piece that I want to make sure that this is discussed on this call and that I throw out there is we talk about economic development in our community and we talk about building things, but any of you on this Zoom call, if you wanted to go open up a business right now in Gary and you find a spot and you say, man, that is the most beautiful land or plot that I can find, and you go to buy it, I guarantee you that someone that looks like you doesn't own it. There's somebody outside of your community, our community, that's controlling major parts of our community, which stunts growth. And even if you wanted to build your community up, you couldn't build it because you don't own it. So that dynamic has to be changed, and we have to be intentional in that. And the last point that I'll leave all of the esteemed panelists with is what the D9, particularly my Divine Nine brothers and sisters, what can the Divine Nine do to encourage and push forward the Black agenda as it specifically relates to economics? We already have a built-in structure. I tease alphas and I tease Qs all the time. But when a cop pulls us over, he don't care whether you pledge Q or alpha. We're all the same. So we have to operate in the same vein. We have to support one another economically. If an alpha has a business that I can support, I'm going to support it because he is a Black man just like I'm a Black man. And hopefully that'll run the other way and it's reciprocal. So the Divine Nine organization should encourage that. We get into a lot of tiffs, Delta versus AKA, Sigma Gamma Rho versus Zeta, Kappas versus Alphas, Alphas versus Qs, and everybody gets lost and everybody's money is going somewhere else. We have to stop that, and the Divine Nine could be very influential in organizing ourselves to encourage the pooling of our assets and the controlling of our community. Did I close it out?
Yes, the closer closed it out. Thank you, Attorney Michael Tobert. We're going to have Soror Gunn give us a recap of the Black Agenda action items, and then we'll have our final closing remarks, just a few more minutes. Soror Gunn, take it away.
So in the interest of time, I'll just start where I left off. We're going to compile all of this into a document and send that information to everyone. So I'll be as brief as I can. For One Church, One School, we have Reverend Cargill. It was founded in Gary by a Roosevelt alum. All congregations should be involved in One Church, One School. Every child should receive a good education, and families should be involved in school. That would encourage better connection between the school, the community, and church, which will overall reduce the dropout rate and ensure cohesiveness. For Indiana Commission for Higher Education with Mr. Fred Jackson, they have the 21st Century Scholarship Program. It started in 91, 92. It's geared towards low-income students and low-income families so that they're able to pursue higher education. They have what is called the 30-60-90 plan to ensure graduation, which is based off of college credits. They have to be drug-free, crime-free, and have a 2.5 GPA when they graduate high school. If they achieve these things, the 21st Century Scholars will pay for 4 years of their college. The number that I have for him is 317-617-0362. And I have an email address of fjackson@che.in.gov. Education is key in preparing the next generation. Scholar success activities are also used to prepare the youth for college and for career planning. Next, we have Lutheran Church, Missouri Sinai, Office of National Mission with Mr. Delwyn Campbell. I have a number of 219-902-9594 and an email address, delwyncampbell@lcms.org. They opened the Ascension Lutheran School, which started with K through 2, and now it is at K through 5. They offer activities such as music and arts, educational assistance, reading, math, photography, and painting. They also have 2 separate scholarships. They work with families because access and information helps families succeed. The programs are offered during the summer. They unfortunately won't be offering them due to COVID this year, but they had a missionary project where they would send teens out. They also had a community garden that was planted that taught people how to grow their own food. And since it was a community garden, anybody in the community could join. Next, we have the American Association of University Women with Miss Winnetka Fisher. Basically, they advocate for women and girls. They pushed scholarships, they did book donations, and they also addressed concerns with families who were struggling with things such as buying diapers for their children. They have community-based training, and she also spoke about a 2-minute activist. So a 2-minute activist is basically a quick way to make an impact. They focus on the Healthy Family Acts and student debt crisis. She made a focus on the Senate Bill 270, and they want to make sure that we support the different bills. She talked about the difference between wealth and income and how they impact us in our communities. She gave contact information for the president, Miss Agnes George, 219-949-6015. They have a website at aauw.org. Next, we have GAPS Gary with Ms. Diane Jackson Chapman. GAP stands for Gary Alumni Pathway to Students. They focus on college and career readiness, employability, and post-secondary skills. She spoke a lot about diplomas not equaling graduation and what that means for our youth. Next, we have Miss Leslie Dillon, who spoke on behalf of the Gary Teachers Union. She spoke about the disparities between Black and Brown children and other races when it comes to education, and how education is going to be at the forefront of the agenda once we go back to school in August and we see that our Black and Brown children are behind when it comes to school. She spoke about teachers being the boots on the ground for our children, how systems are in place to systematically reduce the education that the children in our communities get. She wants to make sure that kids receive the quality education that they are due. And specifically, that's important because our brick and mortar schools are closing, and she wants to ensure that our kids have the resources that they need to succeed. She also believes firmly in the model that it takes a village to raise a child, and that the community should be involved in that. She spoke about mental and emotional health being important, and how standardizing testing is faulty when it comes to using that as a basis to talk about the education of our kids. She also wanted more emphasis on trades instead of traditional college, more information about that, and financial literacy. Next, we have Mr. Glenn Johnson with the Community Vision Foundation, who spoke about the fact that only 23% of people voted. To that point, we need to make sure that the votes that are voted count. In addition to making sure that people are registered, he also spoke about getting people to vote. It's half the battle to get them registered, but we have to finish the battle out by getting them to actually go out and vote. Explaining the voting process, especially the absentee ballot process, is important. Making sure that people are educated and they understand that just because you're registered to vote doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't go out and vote. So pushing for people to actually get out and vote, and making sure that we follow through once they are registered. Our next segment was healthcare. We have Ms. Ruthie Bernard, who is with the Northwest Indiana Black Nurses Association. Their association focuses on giving scholarships to help keep nurses in the community. She gave an email address of rmbernard@comcast.net, and she also stated that her organization helps tutor. Next, we have Ms. Danita Johnson with Edgewater. She spoke about the focus on the social determinants, housing, income, and social, treating the entire person instead of just a piece of that person. She also spoke about the physical, mental, and social health care of the community, and how the Gary Police Department works with Edgewater to give training on how to deal with people who may be having a mental health crisis, and how they can interact with those people better. Because of funding, they were not able to continue that, and that's something that she wants to see continue across the board, not just with the Gary Police Department, but in other communities as well. She spoke about suicide rates being the second highest for some of our youth. ages 5 through 14 is actually the 4th leading cause of death for our youth. And she spoke about poverty, health disparities being, and also having inadequate access to healthcare and education being problematic in our communities. Next, we move on to our business industry, and we have the Gary Chamber of Commerce with Mr. Chuck Hughes. He talked about the Gary Chamber of Commerce basically promoting, attracting, retaining, and supporting businesses. He wants to make sure that we support local businesses and work with companies that do the hiring to get more of our local community members into the jobs. He also talked about considering being members of the Chamber of Commerce because people in Gary need to be involved and they need to have a say in what happens in their community. He also spoke about the D9 voices and being able to come together as a community and getting things done, D9 collaboratively working to bring about change. Next, we had Mr. Roman Bronson with the Indiana plan for, give me 1 second. My notes are jumbled, I apologize.
That's okay. Indiana plan for equal opportunity.
There we go. Equal opportunity. He has a phone number of 219-884-4503, a cell number of 219-290-5882, and an email address of rbronson@indianaplan.org. They have a focus on encouraging people to apply for apprenticeships. He does this by going to public speaking engagements that he's invited to, hosting job and trade fairs. He wants to empower people with information and continue to see these pools of people who look like us in these apprenticeship fields. He has a focus on after school programs with the Electrical Workers Minority Caucus, and they do volunteer work with with making sure that you understand how your vote affects you and your community. Lastly, we have our D9 organizations with Ms. Sandra Starling for Alpha Kappa Alpha. She spoke about the churches, the businesses, and the D9s working together to clean our areas as a way to move forward. Next, we had Delta Sigma Theta with Ms. Shayna Carruthers, who talked about providing support and assistance to the Black community. A soup kitchen that they do with, I believe she said, the Alphas at New Mount Moriah Church that had been placed on hold due to COVID. They have a number of different activities such as voting the Census 2020. They work with the Teachers Union to bring about information with mayoral elections and not just the major elections. They also do things with programs such as drug and human trafficking, bullying, and they partner with organizations to move the community forward. She left an email of GaryAlumniDST@gmail.com and GaryAlumniChapterDST.org for their chapter page. Next, we had Alpha Phi Alpha with Mr. Reverend Carlos Reed. Alpha Phi Alpha is very philanthropic. They focus on leadership in the Alpha Project. A Hopeless People is a Hopeless People initiative. He stated that to move forward, we must be virulent, like the COVID-19, and pushing our Black agenda. Voting is very important. It's integral in a community, and we need to make sure that we're pushing the voting for changes. Next, we had Mr. Michael Tolbert from Kappa Alpha Psi, and he spoke about primary purpose is achievement. He talked about a couple of the initiatives that they have with children, the Kappa League, which teaches young boys to be pillars of their community, the C. Roger Wilson Conference for the undergrad Kappas. They talked about he talked about money management being impactful for our communities. His first point was to support Black businesses, push the Black agenda by pooling and controlling our resources in our community. He spoke about Powernomics by Claude Anderson, which is a book that he said everybody should read. It has a direct correlation with the Black dollar and police brutality. Point 2 was to encourage financial literacy, encourage our people to own our own businesses. And his last point was that the D9 should support each other as Black people and encourage each other to encourage pooling of our assets to help build our communities.
All I think we should say is, can we get an amen for Soror Shakara Gun for compiling and putting all of that together? Absolutely. Hands down.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lot of information to pull together when you've done just an excellent job of recapping those action items that should be for the Black agenda, for Gary, Indiana, for the Black community, created by us, for us. And so we thank each and every one of you for participating in this town hall. This is just the beginning as we move from dialogue to a sense of duty and establishing the priorities as we begin to work on these action steps. We know we're not able to represent every idea, but at least this is the beginning of us working together, not just the D9, but all of our community organizations working together as a cohesive unit. So if one organization is pushing for a particular agenda item, we can support that, but the train can't all be moving towards the same direction, because there's a lot of things that we have to address in our community all at the same time. These are all parallel issues. So our health is definitely our wealth, our economic health, spiritual, financial, social, political, educational. The health and strength of our community is so critical to our foundation and how we are going to move forward. So yes, we are going to compile all of the recommended and presented action items for the Black agenda. We will send those out to each of you, all organizations that are participating on this particular town hall discussion. And there will be some follow-up in terms of action items and accountability and ownership. Once again, there's so many issues in our community. We can't all be focused on political health. We can't all be focused on economic health. But let's find those areas in which we can focus on and strategically address these issues and concerns in our community. So with that, on behalf of the Alpha Sigma Sigma chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, we thank each and every one of you for your time, for your presentations, and may you be well and enjoy this Juneteenth. Stay safe. God bless.